What's up? I'm Joe Santagato, and today I'm going to be answering what am I doing?
Answering the most popular podcasting questions.
That. How much money should I spend on a microphone? $100. Don't buy one of those USB microphones that plug into your computer because they all sound like shit, like you're underwater. There's a microphone, the first one that I used was called an, I don't even know, SM58, I think. It's $100. It's a good microphone. I used it for 5 years probably. Those SM7Bs, those are expensive. Those are like $400. But those are like, I'm never gonna get a different microphone than that. So those are the two. What has been your worst experience podcasting? There was one time where, you know what it is when you start doing podcasts with your friends? You're like, oh, this is gonna be a lot of fun. Maybe we should just like drink on some of them. And then sometimes you get too drunk and you just start saying weird shit. And I remember one time specifically, it was in my apartment in Long Island City, and I was hammered. And I did a podcast with Danny and Frankie. And then as soon as we cut the cameras off, they were like, bro, you're gonna have to edit that one. And I'm like, why? And they're like, because you were just like saying a lot. Like, they're like, you're trying to say something, but you weren't really making sense. And so it could be perceived as offensive, you know? And basically I was talking about how like back in the day, people used to be like, oh, that's gay or something, right? And I was trying to explain the evolution of that, of like, you know, that whatever, when you get more information, like you stop whatever. And they were like, dude. And I was like, no, it's fine. And the next day I watched it. I was like, this is not fine. Like I cut like 20 minutes off of the episode because I'm like, this is gonna get taken out of context, not what I meant to say. I don't think it was that bad. Like I wasn't on there saying like racist shit, obviously, but like would have been off color, I suppose. This one's a big one. Holy fucking. Okay, who the fuck cut this? Can anybody start a podcast? No fucking way. Because it's actually very hard. Like it sounds easy, like just get a microphone, start talking into it. But a lot of the shit that goes on behind the scenes is like a lot more difficult. I always tell people like 90% of growing a podcast is like away from the microphone. Like your episodes could be incredible, but it really accounts for 10% of the growth of anything. There's a lot of other effort that's put into it. So you should do it for free and not post it anywhere for like a month. So 4 episodes, and then see if you want to continue doing that. Because there is a lot of work in it that, people don't realize, I would say. Next. What made you start podcasting? A woman. A woman. I was working at Elite Daily, and there was this woman, Kate Wolf, who was a comedian, and we were on a shoot together, and we just kind of like hit it off. We had good chemistry, and we became friends, and she was in like a bunch of other shoots that we were doing. And then eventually she was like, hey, do you want to start a podcast with me? And I had literally no idea what the fuck that was. And she's like, yeah, I'm going to do one out of this comedy club uptown called Stand Up New York. And I was like, all right, cool. So I was like, yeah, fuck it. So I would go there and start podcasting. And the reason why I started doing it was because, the reason why I liked it was because I feel like hearing yourself in headphones for the first time, talking to a microphone, is like, ooh, this is cool. Like it felt really cool to hear my voice coming through headphones. And yeah, so she got me into podcasting. I did a podcast with her called Invasion of Privacy, and I believe that she still does it. We did that for a few years, and then I branched off and kind of did my own thing because we were just like going separate ways in our careers. But yeah, so that's what got me into podcasting. Kate Wolf. To the big podcasters, what does it feel like to have fans and consistent listeners? I don't know. I think in general, when you have people that are like tuned in, I'm not even gonna lie. I mean, I've been doing this a very long time, so I think I'm desensitized to it now. It's still like a crazy thing when you have to like sit and like really think about, there's thousands of people who like listen to this or that are like legitimate like fans of a show. Like I'm a show, like there's shows and there's people that I enjoy. And I don't feel like one of those people. Like those are my people, and to be that for someone else, it's just like a crazy thought. So I don't like if you take the time to sit around and think about that. It's a cool feeling, and it's crazy to think about. But like I said, I mean, I've just been doing this a long time, so I'm a little bit desensitized to it, honestly. And I just try to focus on being consistent and entertaining. So when people are like, "Oh, I've been listening to your podcast since the first episode," I'm like, "Well, thank God," because if there's people who are like, "Yeah, I used to listen to it, but fuck you," like, then I'm like, "All right, I need to make some changes, I guess." I don't know. Can podcasting be a full-time job? Yeah, it can, definitely. I think that there's a lot of money in podcasting, but at this point, it's a lot harder to get it to that point because everyone has one. At the time when I started my I tell people this all the time. I tell people this all the time where they say they want to start a podcast. I'm like, there has to be a thing, because it's very hard to start a podcast. It's like, oh, me and my friends, we're just going to talk about shit, which is basically what mine is. And I don't think I would have started it in that way if it was today, because so many people have it. And there is that also stigma of people being like, why the fuck should I listen to you? Like, you're not that entertaining, or your opinions. At the time, there wasn't a lot of no one even really knew what it was. And I was just lucky enough to get in at that point. But now I think it would be a lot harder. But definitely it could be a full-time job, and a very lucrative one. If you get to the point where you can generate some ad revenue, you can, obviously you want to put some of that money back into marketing, because the growth of the show is the most important thing. But if you have the podcast, you have, ad reads in the middle of it, companies will pay you money, which is good money too. In the middle of your podcast to do a reads for their company, and they give you a promo code, whatever. There's that. You take the video, you put it on YouTube, you make YouTube revenue. Some podcasts have product placements where, like, fucking Coca-Cola or something, like if they have it on the table and they'll pay for that, or like a fridge in the background for like some drink company. And there's big money in the podcast that you see where the whole podcast is presented by a company. A company will come in and just sponsor the podcast in that way and just have like a complete takeover, and that's probably like millions of dollars. Usually only like very big shows will get something like that, or like a very big celebrity that starts their podcast, it'll be like presented by like fucking Cash App or something, but they're probably paying like $1 million at least for that. And I don't know, it's not forever, it's for like an extended period of time, maybe like 6 months or a year or something, to be like the official sponsor. But yeah, then obviously like you can use your podcast as a way to market maybe other products or other projects that you're working on. So it's really like there's a lot of different ways to kind of do it, and they all kind of exist within every episode. So it's like a consistent marketing machine for yourself. If there's other things that you have to offer, other projects that you want to do, because although before I said it takes a lot of effort to do a podcast, there's still enough time in the day to have other projects as well that you can use to market on this thing that people are already watching. Because that's also very valuable too. Instead of billboards or TV commercials or whatever that people just don't really look at, they're like background noise. People are super engaged into podcasts because this is the person I'm like tuning in purposely to watch. So if they're talking about a product, people are more likely, in my opinion, to purchase that product than seeing it on a billboard and just getting the brand awareness and eventually finding it in the store. So that is worth a lot of money, and that's why, people pay big money to sponsor on podcasts. So yeah, that was a long-winded one. What has been the most important factor driving consistently into producing podcast episodes? I don't understand that question.
What has driven you to consistently put out, like what motivates you to consistently put out episodes, like maybe in the beginning or just even now?
I think money. No. No, I think, with anything, I've been doing internet shit, not just podcasting, for like 10 years. And the only thing that matters is consistency. Even with, that does go hand in hand with money. Not in podcasting, but in video content on YouTube. If you consistently have a schedule of posting, it drives up your CPMs, which is like how much money they're going to pay you per 1,000 people who watch the video or whatever. So if they can guess, there's an algorithm, if they can guess like, okay, every week a video comes out at this time, then they'll target that time and it'll drive prices up. Whereas if you're just inconsistent, they don't know when the video's coming, you don't really get a lot of good placement on like recommended or, whatever the fuck. So it helps to have consistency. And I knew if you're going to start a podcast, there has to be consistency. Like, it cannot stop. Even more so with with video content. I think podcasting is important to have like every single week, figure it out and just like get something out there. Unless you do a show that's like seasons, which I have a podcast, ironically enough, that I don't do every single week. We take like 5 or 6 weeks off. But that's just because that's the way of just producing that show. We're kind of relying on guests, so we have to take some time off to like make sure the episodes are like good enough to post. But yeah, consistency is huge. Just to have a schedule. This is how people are just kind of, this is how they consume content, how they have for so long. I used to watch TV every Wednesday at this time. You'd be like, oh, I know Seinfeld's coming on. Like, you know, the TV guide. There's no TV guide for the internet, so just make sure people are conditioned into knowing when it's coming out. How do we get people to view/listen to my podcast? That's a great question. I don't think anyone has that really figured out. I mean, a lot of it is trial and error. There is marketing that you could put into, there's marketing dollars, obviously, that you can put into, and that kind of is you get what you pay for. Every single day I'm spending money on promoting my podcasts on fucking Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or whatever the fuck, just to try and get new eyes. And one new person is worth so much because, like I was saying before, you get views, whatever, potential to buy merch, potential to buy some other product or, you know, something else that I'm like doing. Like one person is pretty, could mean a lot of money, right? So like everything is, the growth is worth it. One person is worth so much. 10 people obviously is worth more, like just in that way. And also just kind of putting the podcast in front of as many people as possible. So, you know, utilizing a Twitter account, utilizing, you know, Instagram, obviously, TikTok is a big one. TikTok is probably the one that I would say that you should definitely post on and probably make it your biggest priority because I believe that everyone has a chance to go viral on that app. And if your podcast is good and you have good clips and one does go viral and some people will come and check out the page, and if they really enjoy everything, they'll stay. And then they can turn into a, you know, a viewer of yours consistently. Use as many social media platforms as you can, even like the weird ones. Like I've used, especially when I was starting out, used literally everything and was trying to see how everything sort of worked, like what worked on each platform, like because they're all like kind of different. And yeah, just trying to figure that out. But a lot of it's just throwing shit against the wall, to be honest with you. The obvious thing that I'm saying is just try to get in front of as many people as possible. Just post it on every fucking social media platform that you could think of. That's pretty much it. I had an idea for a show once that I gave to this girl. She never did it. But I was like, yo, you should just like this is a cool concept to me. And like, here you go, take it, whatever. Like I was like, if it was a girl or whoever, honestly, if you had like Tinder dates or Hinge dates or whatever, and you invited them over, and like the first time that you guys hung out, you just did a podcast like every single week, you know? And it's kind of, people are so interested in The Bachelor and The Bachelorette, it kind of feels like that, because every week you get a different guest, and then people could like, be like, oh, you know, I really liked Mike, and I hope Mike comes back, or whatever. Like, you just do it like a round robin type of thing. You create your own Bachelor, you know, thing. It's not 20 people living in a fucking house. Like, that's a little ridiculous, but to have that, I thought that was a cool concept. So I might try to produce that. I don't know. How long does it take to put a podcast episode together? It really depends what kind of podcast you do. I mean, for me, for Basement Yard, it doesn't take long at all, if any time, to be honest. Now Frankie will come out. We'll have a talk like the day before, and we'll just like text each other. Usually, whoever texts, the other one ignores, but we both read it. And it's kind of like, you know, what do we got for tomorrow? And we just kind of talk about like, the Prime Minister from Finland. Fucking this or that, and like whatever. And then the next day when he comes over, we just go like, and we just get in the room, and I just type it out on my laptop, like, what were the things? And it's like, okay, Prime Minister from Finland, this and that. All right, cool. And then we turn the cameras on, and we just go. With other shows, I assume it takes longer to put together an actual thing. Like for Other People's Lives, we have to book with a guest. We have to vet them and make sure that their story is like legitimate somehow, or you know, whatever. So that takes a little more time. But again, I don't think it takes that much time to prep for things, unless you're doing like a fucking business podcast. Maybe that takes a little longer. I don't fucking know. What's the biggest mistake when it comes to producing a podcast? The biggest mistake. Probably just giving up on it. You know, just giving up is probably a pretty big mistake, you know? But yeah, I think that people get discouraged very quickly when it comes to podcasting because it's a hard thing to sell people. Especially when I started, it was just audio and everything I was doing up to that point was video. So for people who don't have access to cameras, they just have audio. That's a very hard thing to sell people on. A brand new show that's just audio and people are not like watching a video, it's very hard to sell. So, but you figure that out along the way, and I think that just giving up on it is probably the biggest mistake, and I think that a lot of people do. They start a podcast, and even if they have a good idea or they have a good show, they just give up on it because they're not getting, you know, the numbers they want or the reaction that they want, you know, a couple of months in. And it's just like, oh, why am I wasting my time doing this? I did a podcast for 5 years before I stopped doing it. Different podcast, but it takes time. I believe this is our last one. How has podcasting improved your life personally? I would say that it has improved my life like a lot because there was a point where I only enjoyed doing the podcast. I stopped doing video content on the internet because I just stopped enjoying it. I much rather would do podcasting because it felt more like me and it felt more like open and like just having a conversation was a lot of fun. Obviously, monetarily, it has improved my life as well. It's provided an outlet, and also for the other show, Other People's Lives, we've talked to a lot of people that have a lot of weird stuff, and you get to talk to these very interesting people, and I feel like that has made me a less judgmental person and more just more understanding of different people. Podcasting is also good just to like get like an hour to just discuss, you know, whatever. There were times in the past when I've done podcasts by myself, which is borderline psychotic. But that also was kind of therapeutic too, to sit there for like 45 minutes to an hour and just like get some shit out. You know, now I do therapy instead and I have a podcast co-host, so that helps. But yeah, but that is the most popular fucking podcasting questions on the internet. I hope you guys learned some. So I do it Jimmy Fallon. Can't do it. Oh, good catch. Thank you.